Welcome to BookWorthy. Today we're talking with children's author Laura Sasse. Laura was featured in BookWorthy's launch episodes back in season 1, and I'm excited to have her back to talk about her latest picture book, Faithful Feet. This lighthearted picture book tours through the Bibles, where young readers can be introduced to the silly feet of beloved Bible characters, from Noah's hairy feet to David's brave feet as he stood in front of Goliath, to the joyful feet of the women who hear of the gospel message and our kids can learn about faithfully walking with Jesus. Welcome back to BookWorthy, Laura.
Thanks so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. So I must say our random question is not quite so random. Since your book is about faithful feet, I thought we'd stay on the feet theme and find out what your favorite type of shoe is. A boot, sandal, tennis shoe.
My favorite shoe is a cowboy boot. I've always loved them. And I was visiting some dear friends in Oklahoma last October, so I decided that was the place to buy a pair. But they were so big I had to wear them home on the airplane. And they were kind of hard to take off when they're new, when I went through security, but I did it.
Too fun. Yeah. What is it? Not too many cowboy boots up there in New Jersey, right?
Nope, not too many out. Nope.
I know. I'm in Texas, so cowboy boots are kind of a thing. But it's funny how certain types of shoes can make you feel a certain way. And there's something about a cowboy boot that just makes you stand a little taller.
That's right.
Almost literally and figuratively.
Oh, literally, yes.
Too fun. All right, Laura, tell us a little bit about Faithful Feet. Why feet?
Oh, my goodness. So Faithful Feet is inspired by a couple things. So one, like feet. Feet are just funny. When my kids were little, I loved tickling their feet. There's just something funny. They look a little funny. They can be really stinky. There's just like a fun connection kids have with feet. So I kind of had that percolating in my mind. And then I also have a favorite Bible verse from Isaiah that says, "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who spread good news." And so that verse, paired with knowing that kids love feet, I just thought, gosh, could I use feet as the lens to introduce kids to God's grand story as presented in the Bible through the lens of feet? So that's what Faithful Feet is.
I love it.
So walk through the Bible with feet.
Literal walk through the Bible. And what that verse in Isaiah is interesting because feet typically aren't considered beautiful. There are very few foot models out there, probably. Exactly. Well, too fun. Now, what are the characters that you have used in the story to kind of communicate just the faithful consistency of not just God, but that we as faithful followers can have with God?
Well, I wanted to pick some faithful followers from the Old Testament and from the New Testament, and I wanted to have some male and some female. So from the Old Testament, I picked Noah because, of course, I mean and in the story, he uses his feet to go and gather wood to build the ark. And wow, he was faithful to God when everyone else was laughing at him. Mm-hmm. And I also chose Daniel because Daniel stood strong in the lion's lair. And boy, was he a witness to all those around him when he followed God's way. And then, of course, kids love, and I've already done several school visits with this, and I have a whole season of school visits lined up. But the kids love the story of David and Goliath standing so strong with his feet. And then in the New Testament, of course, Mary on dusty feet, running to tell Elizabeth the news that she's having Jesus. And then I have Jesus's feet doing different walking and sharing, and then going on the cross, and then the women finding the good news that he's alive on Easter Sunday and running on feet to spread the good news. And then I bring it to us and kids today and their feet. So some of my favorite spreads in the book show all sorts of different kinds of kids' feet, just to inspire kids and kids at heart that, yes, now we can share God's story and God's grace on using our faithful feet. And what an offering that is to the Lord.
I love that. And I love how kids just gravitate to unique and funny ways of looking at faith. And I think that really helps them to relate to these stories that they've heard many times, to find
Yes.
a way to make it funny and different
Yes.
and, really engaging. But I have a question.
Okay.
So you have brave feet, strong feet, joyful feet. Why are Noah's feet hairy?
'Cause I just thought that was funny. There's no biblical reason, and it does not say in the Bible that he had hairy feet. I just imagined, gosh, I bet he had hairy feet.
Well, it went 600 years old. He'd had some time to grow some, right? But I thought that was a great way to just kind of jump in there of, feet are just weird.
That's right. That's right.
It made me think of hobbit feet and just, I don't know. It was just fun. And I think, my boys definitely walked away with saying all kinds of funny things about feet.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so happy to hear that.
Now, kind of, what is it? Were you always really good at rhymes and such when you grew up, or poetry come easily to you?
Well, I think that some people have a natural disposition towards rhyme, and so I think I have an ear for it. But I've also then I've cultivated and honed that over the years. But oh yes, I've loved writing. I have my mom saved some of my writing from when I was a kid, and I have a couple of poems that she saved. The meter is not exactly great, but I've honed it over the years. I also speak French, and I think in French, almost everything rhymes in French because you don't have the ending sounds, so it's really easy to rhyme in French. But I think that ear and that love of rhyme is at the root of my rhyming. I love it.
It's fun. It's fun to see how rhyme just kind of flows into almost parents' language. It's just because we're reading rhyme all the time to our kids, and it just kind of, at least I know I find myself, what is it? Get ready for the day before we play. We just kind of rhyming everything to make it stick into our kids' minds. And I love that about rhyme.
In fact, my children have had some what they would call mortifying moments over the years when I rhyme in front of their friends, if we're talking about something, and that's apparently mortifying.
Could definitely see how that would be mortifying to some preteens and teenagers for sure.
Exactly.
Too fun. Now, how did this love of rhyme turn into wanting to write for children?
All right. Well, that's a great question. So I have always loved rhyming. I've always loved reading. And my first career was as a teacher. So I taught elementary school, primarily fourth grade. And so that connection of teaching and loving literature and then loving the Lord and then wanting to convey that to kids. So when my kids were born, when my son was born, I stepped away from the classroom, and that's when I started writing. And I started writing crafts and poems, and many of them were faith-based. And so it was that sort of combination of, I realized I love to rhyme. I think I've got a gift for it. I want to teach. And so putting the two together, it was sort of natural over the course of time to write books.
Too fun. It's neat to see how God gears us and equips us to what he wants to call us to. And even what back and as the books your mom collected is just like you're doing it from the start. And I think that's something fun that I like to communicate to my kids is there's natural gifts that God has given you. And it's like, sure, you could be this, that, or the other, but look at the gifts God's given you and be faithful with those. And so.
Right. And be attuned to them. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes it's not till hindsight, not till you look back and you see how God was placing these different things sort of on your heart over time and giving you these gifts. And you might not realize until you're all grown up. But if you're thinking about what is it that I love to do and what has God gifted me, what comes easily and well to me, and where you kind of feel the joy of the Lord when you're doing it, those might be little indicators that that's something to pursue.
Very true. Now, with this book, Faithful Feet, what are you kind of hoping kids walk away with other than just a few giggles?
All right. Well, I hope they walk away with just an understanding of how much God loves them, and that the Bible is God's story, and that it is a story of redemption. It's a story of grace. It's a story of it's not just his faithful followers as the examples, but God's faithfulness to us, and how he loves it when we share that with others once we understand it. I mean, we can't help but overflow with it and use our feet. And, feet are just a metaphor. It's really about, walking spiritually with God, walking, just like giving our all to him. So I like to let kids know that too. It's not really about your feet. Feet are a fun way to think about it, but it's about following God and trusting in him and in his faithful care through your life.
It's a great metaphor just to kind of communicate that Christian walk, that steadiness. Because what is it? I think I've had seasons where I've hurt a foot. I think it was on a water slide. I went down the water slide wrong and hit my foot. And it didn't get broken, but it was definitely painful for a long time. And they're underrated body parts, I think.
Absolutely.
And so just to look at
for granted and still until something happens.
And we could do the same with God too. We could kind of take advantage of that, like faithfulness and kind of forget to dive into God's word and forget to communicate with him through prayer. And I think it's that picture of just steadiness and standing and, being firm in your foundation are just really great concepts to teach our kids as they start facing hard things in our world and facing school and facing different kids who believe different things, and just knowing that, what is it with both Noah and Daniel and even David, nobody believed anyone could take down Goliath, but David was like, yes, we can. And just to be able to stand up and to say, I am going to stand for the Lord, is kids are having to make that stand earlier and earlier in our ever-changing culture.
Absolutely. And you reminded me of another thing that I hope that kids will take away from the book is that, the Bible can just seem like this is big book and it doesn't have pictures in it, but it's full of amazing stories of God's love for his people over generations and generations. And I hope that the book is just a nice introduction to a little tease so they want to dig in a little bit more. So the illustrations that Emanuela Dodona has done, they connect to different stories. So a fun thing to do with the book after you've read it the first time would be to go back and see if you can figure out what those stories are, and then maybe be a detective and go and look in your Bible to see if you can find those stories. And there's actually an activity kit that goes with the book. It's free. It's a free download. And it has some cards that have pictures of some of the stories. And then at the bottom, there's a Bible verse. So they could try to figure it out. And then if they need a little help, they can use those cards. But just to go and dig into their Bibles. Mm-hmm. So these are in all these Christian resources and books. Those are introductions. But what we really want, we want to be getting into the Bible too. So
very true. We want to just engage their curiosity and make them want to learn a little bit more about Noah's hairy feet. And
exactly.
I was like, did he really have hairy feet? Yeah. I'm like, who knows?
Oh, probably. I don't
know. Okay. Might be one of the questions you ask when you get to heaven. Is like, okay, Lord, how did I do? Was it really
exactly
too fun? Now, you told us a little bit about your author's story and kind of how you moved from teaching to writing. How have you seen God be faithful in that journey?
Oh my goodness. He's been faithful in so many ways, even in leading me to which places to go and seek for publication and opening doors. And I can just see his faithfulness in planting ideas. I like to begin my writing time with some prayer time, and wow, I keep a journal, and sometimes in the journal I'm not even thinking about a story, but when I go back and see, wow, God really used that situation to plant a seed for this idea. And I see it also just in the opportunities I've had with the books to go and connect with families, things that I would never have imagined. Yep, God is definitely. I can see his leading me along the path.
It's fun to watch and to see how busy you are in school visits and really engaging with, local bookstores in your area. And it's fun to see how God has really placed a lot of opportunities in front of you to communicate just sweet, fun truths, with your tender heart devotions. And I'll take it all the way back to Goodnight Manger, just really sweet books that have, engaged people in just loving God's word all the more. And it's been fun to watch your journey too. Now, with all that you do with your books, what is a typical writing day look like for you?
Okay, well, I try to write for a couple of hours. Morning is my best time. I like to have a cup of some kind of beverage, and my preferred beverage is decaf, tea, or coffee. I'm off caffeine. I'm so much more awake without caffeine. For all of you out there that are on have a cup of coffee, switch to decaf. I can't believe how much more energy I have. So, and when I begin with every morning, even I don't count this as my writing time, but I have a prayer journal for my quiet time in the morning. But it helps to set the course of the day. I'm working on multiple projects because I like to set things aside. So any picture book or anything that's made it to publication, just know that I wrote, I then set it aside. I didn't look at it for maybe weeks or months, and then I'd come back. Often I set it aside if there's a problem or I can't quite get something just right. So it goes through that time filter. So by the time you read Faithful Feet, for example, it's been through a lot of revisions and, several years worth. But that's my process. That's why I have more than one project going. And yeah, so that's my typical writing day. And then I go about and do other things. But I sometimes, if I'm really in a groove, I'll keep that notebook open and I'll you probably do the same thing too, Valerie. I come back and I got this. I'll write it down. Sometimes I wake up in the night and I'll have an idea. So I keep a notebook next to me so I can write. I once had a really great third verse I needed for something in the middle of the night, and I wrote it all down. But when I woke up, I had forgotten to take the cap off the pen. So, but I was able to.
Oh no!
I was able to still retrieve it. It might not have been quite as. It wasn't in my mind. It wasn't as perfect as it had been at 3 a.m. But
and what is it? My husband gifted me this writing pad for like in the shower. And I'm like, because I was always writing on the condensation on the shower door.
Yes.
And
yes.
my husband's like, "Do you really remember all the stuff you write on there?" I'm like, so he finally got me a piece of paper that actually works in the showers. It's like, yay! It's funny when those inspirations hit. Can come from anywhere.
You have to capture them. Yep, you have to capture them. So, and then the other thing that I hadn't really thought of as a pre-published author is that I also have to spend. So I try to chunk it out. I have to spend some time sort of on the business end of things, like setting up school visits and doing those kinds of things. So I have a thing where I try to do 2 little actionable steps, I call them, a day. So today I had to reach out with an invoice for someone, and then I reached out to schedule something with a bookstore. Those are my 2 things for today. So, I have a notebook where I keep track of when I do the initial. So there's sort of that side of things too.
Yeah, what is it? Writing a book is always considered hard, but then you think about the marketing side of writing. Yes. It's like, oh, I did not sign up for this. I signed up for writing.
Yeah. Right. It's not quite as much fun. So that's why it's always important to have that creative part each day as well. So
very true. Now, what is your favorite children's book other than your own?
My favorite children's book other than my own. So it's not a picture book, but my favorite all time are the Little House on the Prairie books. Oh. Those are the books that connected me. Those were like foundational to my love of reading. So I'm going to add some other, but so that those, and I've always loved the Little House books that she was telling her story. And so there's heart in her story. And so I've just always connected that. I had whole play worlds based on Little House. I had my own little dollhouse. I had a parallel family to their family, all different names, but they were out on the prairie. And then, so can I add a second one?
Yes,
Okay.
you can.
So, A. Milne, he's a well-known poet, best known probably for Winnie the Pooh. But what I liked, my favorite poetry books were A. Milne, Now We Are Six, and When We Were Very Young. So, and I remember, this kind of gets back to earlier in our chat, my mother reading those to me as I sat in her lap, and I very soon had them memorized. So I think that maybe some of my love of rhyme also has roots in that very early listening to her read and then reciting myself A. Milne. So I just love, and his poems were also just about everyday little things that a young child experiences, and classics. If you haven't read any of his poetry, I highly recommend it.
What is it? Winnie the Pooh is kind of a big part of my childhood. Growing up with visiting my grandmother, it was just kind of part of going to see grandma. It was just Winnie the Pooh. And it's been fun to see, like, as raising my kids, and like to see little nuggets of those rhymes come out to be like, or what is it, when Winnie the Pooh is trying to get into the beehive and he pretends to be a rain cloud. We would just sing that little bit when we would water the flowers, because, we don't want to douse the flowers. It's like, let's be a little rain cloud.
Yes. So, all those things they do get woven into your childhood.
They do.
Yeah. We have a dog, and our stairs from our first floor to our second floor have a landing. So you're halfway up and you're halfway down. And A. Milne has a poem about being at that halfway stop. You're neither up or you're neither down. So I always think of him because Sophie likes to that's where she likes to hang out many times. She's not up and she's not down. It's like in A. Milne's poem.
Too fun. I have a dog that does the same thing on our switchback stairs. She likes that spot, neither up nor down.
Yes.
Too fun. Well, what's something we can expect next from you, Laura?
Well, I'm excited. I have a new book releasing in July. It's an autumn book. So it's coming out just in time so you can read it in the pumpkin patch. It's called Pumpkin Day for Boo and Belle. And it's about a little bunny and a chipmunk who have an annual pumpkin day tea, and something goes terribly wrong with this tea. And it involves some missing mail and a lot of misunderstanding. So are they going to be able to work through their friendship, or is it what's going to happen? So that's they just sent the final lasers. It's going to be on shelves July 15th. So I'm really excited about that one.
Too fun. Is it similar to your Easter book, or Bunny Finds Easter? Is it similar?
No, I would say this one is just like very story rich. It rhymes, but I would say it would be more along the lines of, it's very plot driven.
Okay.
So, and character driven. So, Bunny Finds Easter is just a very simple board book for the littlest ones. And this has a little more complicated plot twists, I would say. So,
oh my.
And includes a map at the beginning, which is really fun, a map of their world. So
very cool. Those are always fun.
Yes.
That sounds like a great read for when we're wanting fall.
Yes.
So come and join us, right?
Exactly. We're not quite there yet.
Not
Let's have
yet.
spring and summer first.
Right. Well, Laura, tell us a little bit where people can find out more about you and your books.
All right. So I would invite your listeners to visit me at my website, which is laurasassitales.wordpress.com. You can learn about all my books there. You can also follow me there. I send out a newsletter / post, like a blog post, once or twice a week. And I would love to have you follow me there and subscribe to that for the latest in inspirational posts. I share ideas for activities, interviews, book news, all that stuff. But you can find all that on my website.
That's always been a fun email that I get, is just when your newsletter comes through. So there's always something fun to look at in there for sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Laura, for joining us today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Always fun. And thank you for joining Laura and me on this episode of the BookWorthy podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments, what types of shoes do you prefer? Or do you have a pair of cowboy boots in your closet too? Don't forget to log your books in the BookWorthy Summer Reading Challenge. Summer might be almost over, but the joy of reading never stops. See more at www.valeriefentress.com, and be sure to like and subscribe to discover more great books together. Happy reading!